Let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time that kind of self pleasure truly felt the way it used to in your early 20s? Think back for a moment. Erections used to come naturally, almost instantly, without effort. Sensitivity felt sharp, alive, almost electric. And the climax wasn't just a physical release, it actually felt complete, a sense of satisfaction, calmness, even a quiet smile afterward. But as the years pass, something begins to change. For many men, erections don't feel as firm anymore. Sensitivity slowly becomes dull. The release doesn't feel as powerful. And instead of satisfaction, there is often a quiet confusion in the mind. Is this just aging, or is something else happening? Now listen carefully, because this is where most men misunderstand their own body. It is not just age. That is not the full explanation. What is actually changing is something far more fundamental: your internal fuel system. Think of your body like an engine. If the fuel is clean, performance stays strong. If the fuel is poor, everything starts to slow down. And this doesn't only affect energy or strength, it directly affects blood flow, sensitivity, and sexual response. Because every part of arousal, every erection, every climax, depends heavily on circulation and nerve signaling. When blood flow is strong, everything feels alive again. When it weakens, everything feels muted. Now, here is what I want you to understand as a urologist. These changes are not random. They are biological, mechanical, chemical. And most importantly, they are influenced by what you eat every single day. Your blood vessels need to stay open and flexible. Your body needs to produce enough nitric oxide, a natural chemical that relaxes and widens those vessels. When that system is working properly, blood rushes in easily, erections feel firm, and sensation becomes more intense. But when circulation starts to decline, everything changes quietly. Less blood flow, weaker response, lower sensitivity, and a less satisfying release. Now, the key point is this: this is not only about aging, it is about long term lifestyle and nutrition patterns. Because certain foods actively support nitric oxide production, improve circulation, and help maintain hormonal balance. While other foods, especially processed fats, excess sugar, and alcohol, slowly damage that same system over time. They reduce vessel flexibility, they interfere with hormone balance, and they weaken nerve responsiveness. That is why you may see something surprising. Some men in their 50s or even 60s still maintain strong vitality, while others much younger already struggle. The difference is not just genetics, it is internal condition. It is what they consistently feed their body. Now, before we go further, let me briefly introduce myself so you understand the context of this information. My name is Dr. Jocelyn. I am a board certified urologist, and for the past several years, I have worked closely with men experiencing exactly these changes. Men who often do not talk about it openly, men who quietly assume their best years are behind them. But what I have seen in clinical practice is very different. When the right changes are made consistently, the body responds, circulation improves, energy returns, sensitivity increases. And one of the most powerful tools we have in this process is nutrition. Not medication alone, not shortcuts, but daily biological support through food. So in this video, I am going to guide you through specific foods that can support blood flow, improve sensitivity, and help restore a more youthful level of response in the body. And I want you to stay with me until the end, because some of these foods are extremely simple, but surprisingly powerful when used consistently. Now let's begin step by step. The first food is something many people completely underestimate: beets. Now let's start with the first food I mentioned, beets. And I want you to understand why this is not just a healthy vegetable in the normal sense, but something that directly influences performance at a biological level. Beets are extremely rich in natural nitrates, and inside your body, these nitrates don't just stay as they are converted into something much more important: nitric oxide. Now, nitric oxide is one of the key chemicals responsible for sexual function. Its main job is simple but powerful. It tells your blood vessels to relax and open up. And when that happens, blood flow increases naturally throughout the body, including the pelvic region. So when circulation improves, the difference is not subtle. Erections feel firmer, response becomes quicker, and sensitivity becomes more noticeable again. What many men don't realize is that this is not about stimulation alone, it is about vascular readiness. If your blood vessels are stiff or narrowed, the body physically cannot deliver the same level of response it used to. But when those vessels are flexible and open, everything works more efficiently. This is why beets have been studied so closely in both cardiovascular and performance-related research. They don't force anything unnatural. They simply support your body's own mechanism for blood flow. And practically speaking, this is easy to apply. You can drink beet juice, you can eat them roasted, or even use beet powder in smoothies. The form does not matter as much as consistency, because this is not an instant effect. It builds gradually over time. Now let's move to the second food, and this one often surprises people: dark chocolate. Most people associate it with cravings or desserts, but in a clinical context, we are talking about high-quality dark chocolate, ideally 70% cocoa or higher. The key compound here is not sugar, it is cocoa flavonoids. These compounds help improve circulation by supporting the flexibility of blood vessels. At the same time, they reduce inflammation in the vascular system, which again improves blood flow efficiency. But there is another layer that is often ignored: the neurological effect. Cocoa has a direct influence on dopamine activity in the brain. And dopamine is not just a pleasure chemical. It is a motivation and reward signal that affects arousal, anticipation, and satisfaction. When dopamine signaling is healthy, the brain responds more strongly to stimulation. Pleasure feels more complete, engagement feels deeper, and the overall experience becomes more satisfying rather than flat or short-lived. This is why even small amounts of dark chocolate, taken occasionally, can subtly influence how the body and brain respond together. Not in a dramatic way, but in a consistent, supportive way over time. Now we move into something even more fundamental: hormones, specifically testosterone. Because no matter how good your circulation is, or how strong your nerves are, hormonal balance still plays a central role in male vitality. And one of the most important nutrients linked to testosterone is zinc. This is where foods like oysters, pumpkin seeds, chickpeas, and lean meats become relevant. Zinc is directly involved in testosterone production and regulation. When zinc levels are sufficient, the body maintains stronger hormonal balance. Energy levels remain more stable, desire feels more natural, and the physical response during stimulation becomes stronger and more coordinated. But when zinc is lacking over time, the opposite begins to happen quietly. Energy drops, motivation weakens, and even when stimulation is present, the response feels incomplete or reduced. This is why some men unknowingly experience changes that they blame only on age, when in reality it is often long-term nutritional deficiency. And this is important because it means the condition is not always permanent. It can often be corrected gradually. Now let's move to another important support system: circulation again, but from a slightly different angle: watermelon. On the surface, it looks simple, just a hydrating fruit. But inside the body, it contains a compound called citrulline. Citrulline is converted into arginine and then into nitric oxide. So again, we are returning to the same central molecule, nitric oxide, the foundation of healthy blood flow. When nitric oxide production improves, blood vessels relax more efficiently, and circulation becomes smoother and more responsive. This directly impacts erectile function because the process depends entirely on rapid and sustained blood flow into the tissue. When that flow is strong, performance feels stable and natural. When it is weak, everything feels inconsistent. Watermelon supports this system gently, without stimulation or force, simply by improving the body's internal chemistry. And the best part is that it is extremely easy to include in daily life. Fresh slices, juice, or blended smoothies all provide similar benefits. Now, after circulation and hormones, we move to something many men completely overlook: nerve function. And this is where walnuts become very important. Because even if blood flow is strong and hormones are balanced, without proper nerve signaling, sensation can still feel reduced. Nerves are what transmit signals between the brain and body. They control sensitivity, timing, and the quality of sensation itself. Walnuts are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which help maintain nerve structure and efficiency. They support the protective layers around nerves, allowing signals to travel more smoothly and accurately. When this system improves, the difference is noticeable. Sensitivity becomes sharper, response feels quicker, and the overall experience feels more connected rather than distant or muted. This is often the missing piece for many men who feel that something has changed, but cannot clearly explain what. Because the body is still functioning, but the signal transmission is not as strong as before. Walnuts help restore that communication pathway gradually over time. And finally, we come to something that brings both circulation and hormonal support together in a more complete way: pomegranate. Pomegranate is rich in antioxidants, especially polyphenols, which protect blood vessels from oxidative damage. When blood vessels are healthier, circulation naturally improves. At the same time, research suggests it may also support testosterone levels, adding another layer of benefit for male vitality. But what makes pomegranate particularly interesting is its combined effect. It does not focus on just one system, it supports multiple systems at once. Blood flow, vascular health, and hormonal balance all receive support simultaneously. This is why many men describe it not as a sudden change, but as a gradual return of function and natural response. The body feels more stable. The experience feels more complete, and the overall sensation becomes more consistent and controlled over time. Now, when we step back and look at everything together, a clear pattern appears. Each food targets a different system, but all of them contribute to the same final outcome: better circulation, stronger hormonal balance, improved nerve signaling, and a more responsive body overall. This is the foundation we need before we move into how all of this can be structured into daily life in the next part. Now that we understand how each food supports a specific system in the body, I want to slow things down for a moment and bring everything into a more practical perspective. Because knowing the science alone is not enough unless you understand how it works together in real life. What most men don't realize is that sexual performance is not controlled by one single factor. It is the result of multiple systems working in coordination at the same time. If even one of those systems is slightly weak, the overall experience changes. But when all of them are functioning properly together, the difference is noticeable in every stage of the process. Let's break this down in a simple way. There are three main systems you need to think about. First is circulation, which controls how much blood reaches the erectile tissue. Second is hormones, especially testosterone, which influences desire, energy, and drive. And third is nerve function, which determines sensitivity and how strongly signals are transmitted between the brain and body. Now, here is the important part. Most men only focus on one of these areas, usually circulation. But in reality, all three must work together for a complete and satisfying experience. This is exactly where the foods we discussed start to show their real value. Beets and watermelon primarily support circulation. They help increase nitric oxide production, which allows blood vessels to relax and expand more efficiently. When this system improves, blood flows more freely into the erectile tissue, which supports firmness and stability. Dark chocolate works on a different level. It supports dopamine activity in the brain. And dopamine is not just about pleasure. It is about motivation, anticipation, and emotional satisfaction. When dopamine signaling is balanced, the brain responds more strongly to stimulation. This makes the experience feel more engaging and complete, rather than short or mechanical. Then we have zinc-rich foods like oysters, pumpkin seeds, chickpeas, and lean meats. These directly support testosterone production, and testosterone is essential for maintaining sexual desire, energy levels, and physical responsiveness. When testosterone is balanced, the body naturally feels more active and responsive to stimulation. Now let's talk about walnuts. This is where nerve function becomes the focus. Nerves are responsible for transmitting signals between the brain and the body. Without proper nerve function, even strong circulation and healthy hormones cannot fully restore sensitivity. Walnuts contain omega-3 fatty acids that support nerve structure and communication efficiency. Over time, this improves signal clarity, which makes sensation feel sharper and more connected. And finally, pomegranate brings everything together. It supports blood vessel health, reduces oxidative stress, and may also help maintain hormonal balance. This makes it one of the most complete foods when it comes to overall male vitality support. Now, when you combine all of these effects, something important happens. You are no longer just improving one isolated function, you are strengthening the entire system. Blood flow improves, hormones stabilize, nerve signals become clearer, and the brain's reward system becomes more responsive. This is why the results are not limited to one area of experience. They affect the entire process from beginning to end. But here is something even more important that I want you to understand as a urologist. Most men assume that what they are experiencing is purely age-related and permanent. But in many cases, that is not true. A large part of what feels like decline is actually the result of long-term lifestyle patterns. Poor diet, low physical activity, chronic stress, and poor sleep gradually affect circulation, hormones, and nerve function over time. These changes are slow, which is why they are often mistaken for natural aging. But the good news is this: the body is still responsive. It can recover when given proper support. I have seen this repeatedly in clinical practice. Men who believe their best years were behind them often experience noticeable improvement once they begin to correct basic nutritional and lifestyle factors. Now, I want to be very clear about something. This is not about chasing perfection or expecting overnight transformation. That is not how the body works. What actually creates change is consistency. Small improvements, repeated over time, create real biological shifts. For example, adding just one or two of these foods regularly can start to influence how your body responds. At first, the changes are subtle. You may notice slightly better energy in the morning, or improved circulation during the day, or a more natural response during stimulation. But over time, these small improvements begin to stack on top of each other, and that is when the real transformation becomes noticeable. Another important point is understanding that sexual health is not separate from overall health. It is actually a reflection of it. Your heart, your blood vessels, your hormones, your nervous system, and even your mental state all play a role in the final outcome. This is why a holistic approach is so effective, especially one that focuses on nutrition first. Because every single thing you eat is either supporting these systems or slowly weakening them. There is no neutral effect. Your body is constantly responding to what you give it. And over time, those small daily choices decide whether your system improves or declines. Now that we understand how everything is connected, the next step is to make this practical. Because knowing what helps is not enough, you also need to understand how to apply it in daily life in a simple and realistic way. In the next part, I will show you how to structure these foods into a routine that actually fits into normal life without making it complicated or overwhelming. Now let's move into something more practical, because understanding the foods is only the first step. The real change happens when you know how to apply them in daily life in a simple, realistic way. Because at this point, I don't want you to think of this as a list of foods anymore. I want you to think of it as a system that supports three core functions in your body: circulation, hormones, and nerve signaling. If you improve all three consistently, the body responds naturally over time. Now, here is the key idea you need to understand. You do not need perfection. You do not need extreme diets. And you do not need to force dramatic changes overnight. What actually works is structure and consistency. Small daily habits that support your biology instead of working against it. Let's start with circulation first. Foods like beets and watermelon are not just healthy additions, they are direct support for nitric oxide production. And nitric oxide is what allows your blood vessels to relax and expand properly. When that happens, blood flow becomes more efficient throughout the body, including the pelvic region, which is essential for erectile function. When circulation improves, the difference is usually the first thing men notice, because the physical response becomes smoother, more stable, and more predictable. Now let's move to hormones. Testosterone is the central hormone for male vitality, and it is strongly influenced by nutrient intake over time. Foods rich in zinc, like oysters, pumpkin seeds, beans, and lean meats, help maintain healthy testosterone production. When testosterone is balanced, you don't just feel it in one area. You feel it in energy levels, motivation, mood, and physical responsiveness. Everything feels more driven again. Next is nerve function, which is often the most ignored part, but it is just as important as circulation and hormones, because nerves are responsible for how sensation is actually experienced. If nerve signaling is weak, even strong blood flow will not feel fully satisfying. This is where walnuts and omega-3 rich foods become important. They help maintain the structure and efficiency of nerve pathways. And over time, this improves how clearly signals travel between the brain and body, which directly affects sensitivity and overall experience. Now let's not forget the supporting foods: dark chocolate and pomegranate. These do not work in isolation, they enhance the system. Dark chocolate supports dopamine activity, which improves pleasure response and emotional satisfaction. Pomegranate supports blood vessel health and protects the cardiovascular system from damage over time. So when you combine everything together, you are not just improving one function. You are supporting the entire network responsible for sexual health. Circulation improves, hormones stabilize, nerve signaling becomes clearer, and the brain responds more effectively to stimulation. This is why consistency matters more than intensity, because the body does not change from one meal or one decision. It changes from repeated patterns over time. Now let me explain something very important from a clinical perspective: A lot of men assume that what they're experiencing is permanent. They think reduced performance, lower sensitivity, or weaker response is just part of aging. But in many cases, that is not true. What they are actually seeing is the result of long term lifestyle accumulation, poor nutrition, lack of movement, chronic stress, and poor sleep habits. All of these slowly affect circulation, hormones, and nerve function. But here is the encouraging part. These systems are not fixed in a permanent state of decline, they are responsive. They can improve when the right support is given consistently. I have seen this many times in clinical practice. Men who believe they had permanently lost vitality often notice meaningful improvement when they start correcting basic daily habits. But I also want to be realistic with you. This is not about quick fixes, and it is not about chasing instant results. That mindset usually leads to disappointment. What actually works is gradual improvement. The body responds slowly at first, then more noticeably over time. You may first notice small changes, better morning energy, slight improvement in responsiveness, more natural physical reactions, and then over weeks and months, these changes begin to build on each other, until eventually the difference becomes clear. Now, one more important point I want you to remember. Sexual health is not separate from overall health. It is actually a reflection of it. Your heart health, your blood vessels, your hormones, your nerves, and even your mental state all contribute to the final experience. This is why nutrition plays such a central role. Because every single thing you eat is either supporting or weakening these systems. There is no neutral impact. Your body is always responding. Now, in the final part, I will show you how to bring all of this together into a simple daily approach so it becomes practical and sustainable in real life without confusion or complexity. Now, let's bring everything together into a clear, practical direction because understanding the science is useful, but real change only happens when you apply it consistently in daily life. At this stage, I want you to stop thinking of this as individual foods or isolated tips. Instead, think of it as rebuilding your internal system step by step, because sexual health is not controlled by one organ or one factor. It is the result of multiple systems working together in harmony: circulation, hormones, nerve function, and brain response. When all of these systems are strong, the experience feels complete, natural, and stable. But when even one of them weakens, the overall experience changes. That is why a balanced approach is the only approach that actually works long term. Now, let's make this very practical. If your goal is to restore a more natural, responsive, and satisfying experience, you do not need complicated routines. You need consistency with the basics. Start with circulation. Make foods like beets and watermelon a regular part of your routine. These support nitric oxide production, which improves blood vessel flexibility and allows stronger blood flow. And without proper blood flow, nothing else can function at its full potential. Next is hormonal support. Include zinc-rich foods such as oysters, pumpkin seeds, beans, and lean meats. These help maintain healthy testosterone levels, which influence energy, motivation, and sexual drive. When testosterone is stable, the body naturally feels more responsive and active. Then comes nerve function, which many people underestimate. But this is what determines how sensation is actually experienced. Walnuts and omega-3 rich foods help maintain healthy nerve pathways, allowing signals between the brain and body to travel more efficiently. This is what brings back sharper, more connected sensation. Now we add the supporting layer: dark chocolate and pomegranate. These refine the system rather than just supporting one area. Dark chocolate enhances dopamine activity, which improves pleasure response and emotional satisfaction. Pomegranate strengthens blood vessels, supports circulation, and contributes to overall cardiovascular health. When you combine all of this, something important happens. You are no longer trying to fix one symptom. You are strengthening the entire biological system behind it. And that is why the results feel more natural and complete over time. Now, I want to be very honest with you as a urologist. Many men assume that sexual decline is permanent or simply an unavoidable part of aging. But in reality, a large part of what they experience is influenced by lifestyle factors that can be changed. Nutrition, physical activity, sleep quality, stress levels, all of these directly affect the systems we discussed. And the body is far more responsive than most people expect. I have seen this repeatedly in clinical practice. Men who believe their situation was permanent often experience noticeable improvement once they start making consistent, realistic changes. But here is something I want you to remember clearly. This is not about perfection. And it is not about fast transformation. The body does not respond to pressure, it responds to consistency. Small daily improvements repeated over time create real biological change. At first, the changes may feel subtle: better morning energy, improved circulation, more natural responsiveness. But as time passes, these improvements begin to build on each other. And eventually, the difference becomes obvious in daily life. Now, I want you to take this final message seriously. Sexual health is not separate from your overall health, it is a reflection of it. Your heart, your blood vessels, your hormones, your nerves, and your mental state all contribute to the final experience. This is why taking care of your body as a whole is so important. Because every single choice you make with food, sleep, and lifestyle is either supporting or weakening that system. There is no neutral ground. Your body is always adapting to what you give it. So instead of trying to chase quick results, focus on rebuilding your foundation. Start simple. Choose one or two foods from this list. Stay consistent for a few weeks. Observe how your body responds: energy, sensitivity, confidence, overall satisfaction. These signals will tell you everything you need to know. And if you stay consistent long enough, you will begin to notice something important: not a dramatic change, but a return of energy, a return of responsiveness, a return of natural confidence in your body. That is the real goal here. Not exaggeration, not fantasy, but restoration. And when your body is supported properly, it knows exactly how to do that on its own. Now, before we finish, remember this: your health is not defined by one moment, it is defined by your daily choices. And those choices are still in your control. If this helped you understand your body in a clearer and more practical way, then stay consistent with it. Apply it gradually, give your body time, and trust the process, because real improvement is not loud. It is steady, quiet, and it builds in the background until one day you realize things simply feel better than they used to. And that is where true recovery begins.